What's up guys, this is Pooka back with another game I played on the Pokemon trading card game online. This one was against another viewer who was watching the stream, got a question right, played a game against him. This one's going to be against Timmymon, Timmy. And yeah, this one I'm going to be using my Hydreigon deck against his Garchomp Altaria. So these are two of the newest decks that came out thanks to Dragons Exalted. Because before we didn't have either of these Pokemon. I mean, we did have a Hydreigon before, but it was the Dark type one that wasn't very good. It's weak to fighting. Takes 4 energy, it's a stage 2. Not very good. This version is going to be just like the Kling Klang deck, where you get the Hydreigon out, use Dark Trance, move all your Dark energy around. Attack with Darkrai, move the energy around, max potion, blah blah blah. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward, very good. My opponent's going to be using the other new deck from Dragons Exalted, which is the deck that got a lot of hype from Japan. It's the Garchomp Altaria deck that uses the Stage 2 Garchomp with Mach Cut and Dragon Blade. And then Altaria's Fight Song to add more damage to your stuff. And overall, just a deck that works pretty well together. So we'll see how these two decks match up against each other. Now right now I started with the Dino, who just has 60 hit points, so I didn't draw any other basics besides my Shaman EX. Catch it out the Swablu, but I really need to bench this Shaman EX. I don't want to, but if I don't, and my opponent just goes Rare Candy, Garchomp, Retreat, I lose the game. So I think I'm just going to headbutt here, but actually I got sand attacked. So I had to flip for the headbutt and I got tails. So I don't even get to do 10 damage to the Swablu. Gibble has sand attack, which can be a very annoying attack sometimes. It can stop you from attacking if you get tails. You don't get to do anything. So my opening hand looked pretty promising. I got to play Juniper. Got some energy in my discard pile for Dark Patch, but then I followed it up by drawing nothing I could actually use. Next turn I can play supporters, but until then I can't really do anything. Now my opponent did retreat and played an energy switch to his Emolga, which will let him call for family, get a couple more basics out here. Now, energy switch, that's going to make me think he plays like Terrakion, which could be a big deal. Just having that option to retaliate one of my Darkrai's could be devastating for me if it ever gets to that point. Now I do get my Zweilous out here, stage 1, and I will be able to catcher a Swablu again just to try to buy some time. I can always junk hunt those back later with Sableye, so I'm not too concerned about wasting catchers early on. Normally, throughout the game, you do get a couple chances to go ahead and do that. But my opponent didn't have any supporters last turn, so I have a decision if do I want to Juniper or N here. Normally, I would just say whatever. I'll N and deal with the consequences. If I get set up, it's better for me anyway. But I decide to Juniper this time, just because my opponent has such a bad hand. And I figure if I get set up first, I will win pretty much every time. Unfortunately, this is the hand I drew. I have 3 max potions, a Registeel, a level ball for a Dino. Yeah. Not a whole lot going on for me. That is pretty ugly, to say the least. I'm going to double hit and only do 20 damage. And now, what do I do with this monstrosity of a hand? 3 max potions, don't need those right now. I do have a Hydreigon. Not going to do much without any energy in play with no Darkrai. And a Registeel, which could be good eventually. But for now, probably not so good without the energy in play. So my hand is pretty bad. I have that Shaman EX, which only has 110 hit points. That's going to be a target eventually. How am I going to handle this? I don't really know. I'm going to need to top deck something soon. Something as simple as a Darkrai or a Switch would work. Then I could just go ahead and go to my Sableye. And he actually decides to Catcher out my Dino, which is an interesting choice. Not sure why he decided to do that, but he did. And here I'm going to just random receiver. Good top deck for me. Hopefully that's not a Juniper. I don't want to discard 3 max potions. That might be game over. But I do get an N. Now at this point, I am okay with playing an N. It's going to give him a new hand, which is why I didn't play it in the first place. But I have my Hydreigon in play, and I need to start drawing stuff soon because all it really takes for him to set up is 1 Gabite. Then he can Dragon Call for another one, which can Dragon Call for another one, which can Dragon Call for an Altaria. And then next turn he has 3 Garchomps out, and I'm going to be pretty far behind. Now here I do draw a Dark Patch, another Rare Candy, and a Hydreigon, so I could get another one into play. But I might actually just have to Dark Patch, and then use Dino's Bite to knock out Swablu, just to get something out of my prizes. It's kind of risky. He could have a Rare Candy and a Garchomp and knock me out, but odds of that happening aren't too great. Most of these Garchomp Altaria decks play like 3 Rare Candy or so, just because the Gabite is so good that first you want to evolve into Gabite. So I will just go ahead and take the knockout. I don't mind too much if he knocks out the active. I'm going to lose a couple energy, but then at least I get to send up Sableye and Junk Hunt. And here I get to take the first prize. This is the main reason I'm doing it. Against this deck, usually you face an early onslaught of Garchomps. And I think normally the Hydreigon deck is the one falling behind early. You usually give up a couple prizes before you get all set up, and then you have to start taking prizes with Darkrai, and you kind of weather the storm with max potions, and eventually you win out that way. But at the beginning, you definitely fall behind most of the time. So if I can kind of even the gap a little bit, give myself a little bit of a buffer, where I take the first prize, now I don't care too much if he takes like the next 3, I'm fine with this. So I think taking the prize there is definitely the right move. But now we can see he's got 1 Gabite, which allows him to search for another one here in a second. We'll see, I'm sure. Yep, there's another Gabite. And when he evolves that one, he gets to use that Dragon Call, which will get him... Well, it could get him a Garchomp. Now, if he Rare Candies into a Garchomp, that would be pretty bad for me. But it's another Gabite, so I'm happy with that. I won't get knocked out this turn. I'll save my energy. And maybe things will be alright. Maybe. As you can see before in my discard pile, I had to go through a lot of resources. There's 3 catchers in there already. And I had to burn 3 ends already. Only 1 Juniper, I think. So I do have some supporters left, but not too many. I used a bunch of supporters already. Just discarding them with that initial Juniper. I discarded 2 ends. So as the game goes on, I might run out of supporters. That's always something to worry about. But who knows? If I thin my deck out enough, I might not need supporters. And yeah, who knows? We'll see. So right now I'm going to Rare Candy into my Hydreigon. I do have this Bianca, but I'm going to play the random receiver first. I think I would prefer to use N instead of Bianca, maybe even Juniper. Although I do not really want to discard all of these cards from my hand. Registeel is actually kind of cool in this matchup if you can use him twice. You can just soften up all of their Garchomps, do triple laser twice, 30 on all of the Garchomps, and then all of a sudden Darkrai is just knocking them all out in one hit with Night Spear, and you still get to do 30 to a bench Pokemon. So I'm going to bench Registeel, hoping for my Darkrai, and hey, I get an Ultra Ball. So I can discard my other Hydreigon and Mewtwo. I don't think I'll need Mewtwo in this matchup. And finally we'll get Darkrai. Now I could Night Spear this turn, but I've already given myself a 1-turn buffer with that first prize. So I think I'm actually going to use this turn to Junk Hunt, just because I've used so many resources. I've used 3 catchers. We have a Dark Patch in there. There's a couple Dark Energy in the discard pile. Mainly what I want to get back is Catcher. since you don't have Junk Arm in the format anymore, you want to get back these catchers and give yourself an opportunity to catcher out the Altarias. If I just have to attack the active Garchomp every turn, it's probably not going to go so well. And I'm just going to Dark Trance, move my energy off of my Hydreigons because those can be knocked out by Garchomp. I'm weak to Dragon, and I don't want that to happen. So I'm just going to Junk Hunt here, take a look at what's in my discard pile, and just end up taking 2 Pokemon catchers because I need to catcher out Altarias and take those out of play and take prizes every turn. Basically, my strategy from this point on is going to be catcher out an Altaria, do 30 to a Garchomp. Catcher out an Altaria, do 30 to the same Garchomp, and then that'll have 60 damage on it, which will let me Night Spear for a knockout on that Garchomp that I've softened up with Night Spear. And then we can soften up the next Garchomp. So you just kind of try to use Night Spear to knock out Altarias and set yourself up for future knockouts. And this is kind of why this Darkrai Hydreigon deck has a solid matchup against the Garchomp deck. The Garchomp deck actually isn't that great against Darkrai. I can't knock it out in one hit. If you decide to catcher out the Hydreigon and knock that out, then you don't really knock out Darkrai. And if you attack the Darkrai, they can max potion. So it's kind of a lose-lose situation. You know, the better situation, obviously, there is to knock out the Hydreigon then. But, I mean, eventually Darkrai is just going to be pounding on your door, and what do you do against him? This is why some of the Garchomp Altaria decks have started to feature Terrakion and Energy Switch, just to get a surprise knockout on a Darkrai, because otherwise you're never going to knock it out in one hit. And when you can't do that, Night Spear is just too efficient, especially if you can move all the energy off with Dark Trance and Max Potion. So here he plays an N, gets me a much better hand, honestly. And I will start the Night Spear barrage on his Altarias, because I have 2 catchers in my hand, and 2 Max Potions. So he actually gave me a really perfect hand off that end. I do not want a Juniper. I cannot afford to get rid of these resources. I'm going to go ahead and Pokemon Catcher out an Altaria. I could go for the Gabite. That would be a viable option as well, to be perfectly honest. If you just keep targeting the little guys, eventually he'll run out of them, and then all you have to do is deal with like 2 Garchomps. But at the same time, Altaria is an easy target, and it provides the additional damage for Garchomp. So if you can take all of those out of play, all of a sudden his Garchomps become a lot weaker, and you do not really have to worry about them at all. So I'm going to go for the Altarias. The other reason for doing this is that he's probably going to fill his bench again with more Swablues, because really, Garchomp isn't that great without Altaria. And that's going to open up the door for easy prizes for me as well. So he Dragon Calls for another Gibble, actually. That's interesting. He benches that. You can't actually Dragon Call for Swablu because it's a colorless Pokemon. It's kind of a funky thing, and the colorless Pokemon evolves into the Dragon type. But that's just the way they designed it. I'm not sure why, but that's how it is. And the one thing holding me back here is I have 1 basic dark on my field and 3 blend energy. That's not very good. The reason this is bad is he can just hit me for 80 with Mach Cut right now, which will discard my blend energy. And if I don't start drawing basic darks, I'm going to run out of them. So here, I'm going to Dark Trance. This is the beauty of the Hydreigon deck. You Dark Trance all the energy off, Max Potion the active Darkrai, and all of a sudden it just looks like he didn't attack me at all. I draw a basic Dark, which was one of the best cards I could have drawn. Got a Dark Trance, all the energy back to Darkrai. Use another catcher this turn to bring out Altaria. There we go, and I'm going to save this hand once again because I have that Max Potion, which I'm going to need for next turn. And this is just the strategy I was outlining earlier. I've now taken out the Altarias. I've softened up that 1 Garchomp that now has 60 damage on it. Get my other Darkrai from the prizes, which is great. I was fortunate enough to open up a second Darkrai, so I can actually somewhat build this deck now. Having 2 Darkrai's out will allow me to retreat and just kind of swap them over and over. It helps when you don't have Max Potion all the time. You can take a hit, retreat to another one, and go from there. And at this point, feeling pretty good. I'm up 2 prizes, but it's definitely not over yet. If he does play that Terrakion, I still could be in some trouble, just because it would wipe all the energy off my board pretty much. A Retaliate would be devastating. It would knock out the Darkrai, he'd get 2 prizes, and he'd leave me with just 1 energy in play. That's not a spot I want to be in, obviously. But the one thing I do have going for me is I took out all the Altarias. Now that's actually going to make it so it's much more difficult for him to knock out Shaman EX. Because it has 110 hit points, but without the Altarias, he maxes out at 100 damage. So Shaman EX actually becomes a legitimate attacker for me in the future. And he actually just mock cuts here for 60. And that brings me to an interesting decision where, again, I don't know if I want to Juniper here, but I'm so worried about losing all my blend energy that I think I'm going to just use the max potion. I don't really have to this turn, but losing all my blend energy would be bad. So I want to draw into another basic dark here. And I do with the Dark Patch as well. So let's just Dark Patch onto Darkrai. They will attach to the active and then retreat. I could Ultra Ball and get some cards out of my deck, but at this point in the game I might want to worry about decking out. So you can see my deck is kind of thin. I might want to save cards in my deck so I can shuffle them back in with N, just so I don't deck out. So I don't really want to Ultra Ball and thin stuff out. There's not too many things I need anymore. I believe there are 2 catchers left. There might be... yeah, there should be 2 catchers left. Still haven't used the golden one. And I junk hunted 2 back earlier. So we will see. There might actually be 1 catcher left now that I think about it. I junk hunted 2 when there were 3 in the discard pile, then I played 2. So yeah, there's only 1 catcher left. But I have a lot going for me in the sense that there's 90 on the active Garchomp, 60 on the bench Garchomp, 30 on that Gabite. So he's running out of attackers that won't just be knocked out in 1 hit. Eventually, I'm just going to be able to sweep the field with either Darkrai or Shaman EX. And like I said, without those Altarias in play, Shaman EX becomes a viable attacker again. These decks don't play plus power, because why would you when Altaria gives you plus 20 damage anyway? So basically what I'm trying to get at is I'm in a good position. It's far from over just because of that Terrakion situation that I outlined earlier, where he could just go Terrakion, Energy Switch, Fighting, Retaliate, and boom, knockout. That would be very troublesome. So he's actually going to Super Rod in 2 Swablues and an Altaria. He actually hasn't gotten another Garchomp into play, which makes me think 2 might be prized. That is really unfortunate for him. He hasn't been able to take prizes, so that's really bad as well. He's going to attach the blend to the active because he realizes that I can't 2-hit knockout your Darkrai without using Dragon Blade at this point. Could catcher the Swablu and get that. That would be bad. So he's going to Dragon Blade the active for 100. And once again, I have my max potion. So I'm going to negate every single attack he's done so far. He's taken 1 prize on my Sableye. And then after that, it's been a pretty bad shutout, honestly. So I'm going to Dark Trance all of the energy back up to Darkrai after I heal it off with Max Potion. We'll get a knockout this turn. And then next turn we should be able to get something here. Now I do have like 6 cards left in my deck. And I'm going to discard my Sigilif and Ultra Ball. Just going to see what's in there. There's 1 catcher. N is my only supporter left. There's a Level Ball, 2 energy. And yeah, the catcher is what I want. But I'm not going to kill myself going for it. There are some situations where I can actually lose still if he uses Sing with Swablu and I deck out. So I want to be very wary of that. There's no reason for me to really dig through my deck to get that catcher at this point. Especially if he has 2 Garchomps prized. He'll have to Super Rod this turn. Go for it. And yeah. That Gabite has 60 damage on it. Night Sphere is going to be able to knock that out. And eventually I'll just clean up with Shaman EX. So at this point I'm feeling very confident. Still, I could lose if he drops that Terrakion energy switch. That would be one way for him to win this match, because he could take out the energy on my board, and I would be in some trouble. I wouldn't know how to follow up that move, because if I attack with Shaman EX with my last 2 energy, he could knock me out with a Dragon Blade with an Altaria in play. So I might have to use actually Registeel if he drops the Terrakion. You can see how devastating that Retaliate out of nowhere actually is. Maybe that was a reason why I should have ended there, but I'm so paranoid about decking out, I feel like that's more of a possibility than the Terrakion. I decided to hold on to the N. I don't know, looking back, maybe I should have just done it. But you live and you learn. And right now, I don't know what my opponent's plan is. It looks like he does not have the Terrakion. If he doesn't, I don't think there's any way I can lose. To be perfectly honest, I don't think I can lose if he doesn't have the Terrakion. There's just too much damage on his board, and he actually takes back the Blend Energy. There's too much damage on the board. He's going to... Well, looks like he's going all in, folks. He's going for the Sing. And he plays a Max Potion. That's actually going to prevent my win condition. Retreats to the Swablu. And here we go. He's going to Sing and try to deck me out, I think. That's going to take quite a few sleep flips, but it is a possibility. Once I get down to 0 cards in my deck, I will just play N, and then shuffle my hand in, draw 2 cards. That should leave me with about 4 or 5 cards left in my deck, depending on what's in there. So I'm not even going to play anything. You want to build up your hand size in this situation. Not play any more cards just so you can N and shuffle your hand back in, and then draw as few cards as possible. If I were to use like Ultra Ball here or even Random Receiver, I would actually take cards out of play. It would hit my discard pile. I wouldn't be able to prevent myself from decking out with the N. So that would be a big problem. Now he's actually going to retreat here to Garchomp and catch me while I'm still asleep. But I don't know how successful this is going to be. I mean, it could be if I stay asleep again. This could be one way for him to come back. But I'm fortunate enough to wake up. And at this point, I can just retreat to my other Darkrai, just so I don't lose my energy on that one. We will Dark Trance, move all the energy up to the active. And I can probably just move the energy off that Darkrai too. Yep, we'll move it to Registeel. He's a pretty big, bulky guy that's not going to be knocked out anytime soon. And there we go. My opponent says, I think I lost this. At this point, it's a pretty safe assumption, but he could still deck me out. And yes, he does say 2 Garchomp are prized. So that is going to pretty much wrap this up. Opponent says GG. But, looks like he hasn't actually quit yet. Usually when you say GG, you give up. But in this case, he's saying GG and still trying to win. So I'm just going to end my turn once again. Not playing any cards, just to prevent myself from decking out. If I ever wake up, the game's over. Because I can just Night Spear. I have that catcher in my hand. So basically this is just going to turn into a waiting game. Now, theoretically, I could stay asleep for the next 10 turns and not be able to attack, and I would deck out and lose. This is still a possibility. Alright? So, don't take this situation lightly, even though it looks completely over. I've seen some pretty dumb things happen in this game. I've seen someone get paralyzed turn after turn after turn and then just deck out, but I do wake up this time, and it's game over. But just a warning, don't ever think it's over until it's over. I've seen people get paralyzed 5 turns in a row and then get decked out because they can't switch and take their last prize. So anything can happen. As long as there's a chance you can still lose, don't get complacent. But that will wrap this game up, folks. Thanks for watching. Thanks to Timmy for the game. And I'll try to have some more games up soon. Hopefully you enjoyed this. This was a matchup between 2 top decks in the format. Very, very popular decks that are going to see a lot of play at Battle Roads, I'm sure. The Hydreigon deck has been very successful so far throughout Battle Roads. Garchomp, not so much. That's going to wrap it up. I've been Pooka. Thanks, guys, and I'll see you next time.